So, our focus today with Henry VIII is going to be on foreign policy. So, Henry VIII does represent this break with his father. They're both very different men, and we see this early on in two of his earliest actions when he has Empson and Dudley arrested and executed, and he marries Catherine of Aragon, both of which, it's got to be said, were incredibly popular actions that Henry VIII carried out. We see it in foreign policy. Henry VII's foreign policy was all about diplomacy. It was all about marriage alliances. Henry VIII wants to be a warrior king. His ambition is to have himself crowned as King of France. So again, in foreign policy, their approaches are very, very different. And Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon, of course, the marriage takes place with an invasion of France in mind, because Catherine of Aragon represents an alliance with Spain and a ready-made alliance to go to war against France. So his ambitions in France are he wants to be the King of France. Now, Edward IV and Henry VII had invaded France, but they were for defensive reasons. So the force which Henry VII sends, as we've seen, is all about placing pressure on France, who were focused on Italy at the time, and it is all about getting a pension and signing the Treaty of Étaples and France ending their support for Perkin Warbeck. The problems that Henry had in invading France were threefold. So firstly, Henry needed an ally. France was bigger, it was richer, it was militarily stronger than England was at the time. So he needed an alliance, and this is where Catherine of Aragon comes in. This is why Catherine of Aragon and that ready-made marriage alliance, and therefore military alliance with Spain, this is why it is so useful. Because Ferdinand, of course, has claims to territory that he wants from the France in the Pyrenees. So they've got their common enemy, if you like, England and Spain, is France. Secondly, though, the second problem with invading France is there's no reason for it. There's no cause for going to war. Since 1494, France had stayed out of English affairs. Since 1494, France had been more concerned with territories in Italy. So there was no real cause, there was no real justification for England going to war in France. And a third reason is Henry VIII's advisors, who were of course his father's old advisors, didn't want to go to war in France. So we see this with Richard Fox, and we see this with Archbishop Wareham. Neither of them want to go to war. Both of them want to follow Henry VII's old diplomatic approach to foreign policy. So Henry VII wasn't around, but his advisors and his ideas still were. They didn't want Henry VIII to squander England's wealth built up by his father on a needless invasion of France. So if Henry wanted to go to war with France, he would need to free himself from the protective grip that his father's old advisors had on him.